My daughter and her husband dumped their 10-year-old son on me for 8 full years, swearing the $180,000 college fund was untouchable. I believed them. I raised him alone. School, doctors, clothes, food, dreams of the stars, without a single dollar from them. Then the bank told me, they drained it all a month ago. I gave a small smile, made one phone call, and the very next day they stood shaking at my doorstep, clueless that real justice was only just beginning. Before continuing, subscribe to our new channel, where we tell stories about men who take revenge on their insolent children, sons-in-law, and daughters-in-law. My name is Richard Coleman. I'm 68 years old, and I've lived in Portland, Oregon for the past 43 years. I spent 32 years on the bench as a judge in Multnomah County Circuit Court before retiring a decade ago. People always said I had a reputation for being fair but firm. What they didn't know was that I learned patience not in courtrooms, but through my telescope, waiting for the perfect celestial alignment. The universe has its own timeline, and so does justice. 8 years ago, my daughter Danielle showed up at my door with her husband Trent and their 10-year-old son Ethan. She had this tight smile on her face, the kind that doesn't reach the eyes. "Dad, we need to ask you something," she said, and I already knew I wouldn't like what came next. They needed help. Temporary help, she promised. 6 months, maybe a year. Trent had a big opportunity in San Francisco, some real estate development project that required their full attention. They couldn't take Ethan with them. Too disruptive for a child, they said. He needed stability, a good school, a loving home. I looked at my grandson that day. Ethan stood behind his parents, small for his age, clutching a backpack with both hands. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Something in my chest tightened. "Of course," I told them. "Family takes care of family." Danielle wasn't always like this. I remember when she was 7, how she'd wait by the window every evening for me to come home from the courthouse. She'd run out to meet me, wrapping her small arms around my waist, talking a mile a minute about her day. "Daddy, guess what happened in school?" That little girl grew into a brilliant young woman. She went to Portland State University, got her law degree. I was so proud. I thought she'd follow in my footsteps, maybe become a prosecutor or a judge herself. But she met Trent during her final year, and everything changed. Trent McVeigh. Even his name leaves a bitter taste. He's 41, works in commercial real estate, or at least that's what he calls it. Mostly he chases deals that never quite materialize, always one handshake away from making it big. He's got that slick charm, the kind that impresses people at cocktail parties but doesn't hold up under scrutiny. When they first started dating, I ran a background check on him. Old habit from the bench. Nothing criminal, but plenty of failed business ventures, defaulted loans, and a pattern of living beyond his means. I tried talking to Danielle about it. She accused me of being controlling, of not trusting her judgment. We didn't speak for 6 months after that. By the time we reconciled, she was already married. The day they left Ethan with me, they made a big show of their responsibility. Danielle pulled out a folder full of documents. "We've set up an education fund," she announced. $180,000 for Ethan's college. It's in a trust account at Wells Fargo. You'll be named as a co-trustee, so you can access it when he's ready for university. She slid the papers across my kitchen table. "We want you to know we're taking care of his future, even if we can't be here every day." I read through the documents carefully. The account was real. The money was there. Trent stood behind Danielle, his hand on her shoulder, wearing that practiced smile. "We know this is a big ask, Richard, but we trust you. You raised Danielle right, and we know you'll do the same for Ethan." That was 8 years ago. 8 years of raising my grandson on my retirement pension. 8 years of parent-teacher conferences, orthodontist appointments, school supplies, and clothes he outgrew every 6 months. 8 years of teaching him to ride a bike, helping with algebra homework, and sitting with him in my backyard observatory, showing him the constellations. 8 years of being there for every scraped knee, every disappointment, every achievement. And in all that time, Danielle and Trent visited exactly 3 times. 3 visits in 8 years. Each time they showed up with expensive gifts and empty promises about soon and next month, and things are finally settling down. Ethan stopped asking about them after the second year. He stopped calling them Mom and Dad and started referring to them by their first names. "Do you think Danielle will call for my birthday?" he'd ask, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the hope underneath. Usually they didn't call. I watched my grandson grow from a quiet, anxious 10-year-old into a thoughtful young man. He found solace in the same place I did, the stars. On clear nights, we'd sit together in the observatory I built in the backyard, and I'd teach him about distant galaxies and cosmic phenomena. He soaked it up like a sponge. By the time he turned 16, he knew more about astrophysics than most college students. His teacher said he had real talent, the kind that could take him far. Last spring, Ethan got his acceptance letter from Oregon State University. Full admission to their astrophysics program, with a partial scholarship, $12,000 a year. He came running into the house, waving the letter, his face lit up with pure joy. "Grandpa, I got in. I actually got in." We celebrated that night with his favorite dinner, homemade lasagna, and afterward, we sat in the observatory until dawn, talking about his future, about the research he wanted to do, about the discoveries he might make. The tuition at Oregon State runs $32,000 a year, not counting room and board, books, and supplies. The scholarship covered a chunk, but that still left $20,000 a year to find. I'd been living on my pension, and after 8 years of raising Ethan, my savings were nearly depleted. I'd spent about $39,000 a year on his care: food, clothes, medical insurance, school expenses, extracurriculars. It adds up faster than you'd think, but I'd managed it, never complained, because that education fund was sitting there, waiting. $180,000. Enough to see him through 4 years of undergraduate study, with some left over for graduate school. 2 weeks ago, I drove to the Wells Fargo branch on Southwest 5th Avenue to begin the paperwork for accessing the fund. It was a Tuesday morning, and the bank was quiet. I met with Daniel Morrison, the trust accounts manager. He was a thin man in his mid-40s, with wire-rimmed glasses and a nervous habit of clicking his pen. "Mr. Coleman," he said, pulling up the account on his computer. "Let me just verify the details here." He typed for a moment, then frowned. His expression shifted from professional courtesy to something uncomfortable. "Sir, I'm afraid there's been some activity on this account." "Activity?" I leaned forward. "What kind of activity?" Morrison's pen clicked 3 times rapidly. "The account was closed 4 weeks ago. Your daughter, Danielle Coleman McVeigh, and her husband, Trent McVeigh, withdrew the entire balance, $180,000. The words hit me like a physical blow. For a moment, I couldn't speak, couldn't think. The office walls seemed to tilt slightly. "That's not possible," I finally said, hearing how hollow my voice sounded. "That money was for Ethan's education." "I understand, sir." Morrison looked genuinely sympathetic. "But according to our records, they were the primary account holders. You were listed as a potential co-trustee, but that designation was never formally activated. They had full authority to withdraw the funds." I sat there in that sterile bank office, staring at Morrison's computer screen showing a zero balance, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, not yet. Something else. The same feeling I used to get in the courtroom when a defendant's story started falling apart under cross-examination. The moment when you realize someone has been lying to you all along, and you're about to find out just how deep the deception goes. "Mr. Coleman?" Morrison's voice seemed to come from far away. "Are you all right? Can I get you some water?" I stood up slowly. "No, thank you, Daniel. I appreciate your time." My voice was steady, calm. I'd spent 3 decades on the bench learning to control my reactions, to show nothing when everything inside was churning. "Could you print out the account history for me? I'd like to see exactly when and how the withdrawal was made." He handed me the documents 5 minutes later. I folded them carefully and walked out of that bank into the bright June morning. Portland was beautiful that day. 72 degrees, clear skies, Mount Hood visible in the distance. People walked past me on the sidewalk, going about their lives, completely unaware that mine had just cracked open. I drove home on autopilot, my mind spinning through the implications. $180,000. Gone. Spent on what? The documents showed the withdrawal was processed in person at a San Francisco branch. Both signatures required, both provided. They'd planned this together, walked into a bank together, and stolen their own son's future together. When I pulled into my driveway, I sat in the car for a full 10 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at my house. This house where I'd raised Danielle. This house where I'd raised Ethan. This house that suddenly felt like a crime scene. Ethan's bike was leaning against the garage. Through the window, I could see him at the kitchen table, probably working on his summer reading assignments. He looked up and waved when he saw me, that easy smile on his face, trusting and innocent. He had no idea what his parents had done, no idea that the future he'd been promised had just evaporated. I waved back and got out of the car. Time to go inside and pretend everything was fine. Time to be the grandfather who had everything under control. But as I walked to my front door, I felt something shifting inside me, a transformation beginning. I'd spent 8 years being the patient, loving guardian. I'd spent 8 years believing that Danielle and Trent would eventually come around, would eventually remember their responsibilities. That version of me died in Daniel Morrison's office. The man walking through my front door was someone else, someone who'd spent 32 years studying the law, understanding its intricacies, knowing exactly how to make it work. Someone who'd learned from the stars that patience isn't passive, it's strategic. You wait for the right moment, the right alignment, and then you act with precision. "Hi, Grandpa," Ethan called from the kitchen. "How'd it go at the bank?" I hung up my keys and walked toward him, my face carefully arranged into a smile. "Just fine, kiddo. Just fine." That night, after Ethan went to bed, I sat alone in my observatory. The stars were particularly clear, Arcturus burning orange in the western sky, Saturn visible just above the horizon. I'd built this observatory 15 years ago, back when my wife was still alive. She used to joke that I spent more time with the universe than with her. Maybe she was right. After she passed, this became my refuge, the place where I could think without distraction. I spread the bank documents across my lap and read through them again under the red light I used to preserve my night vision. $180,000. Withdrawn on May 15th, exactly 4 weeks ago. While I was helping Ethan study for his final exams, while I was planning his graduation party, while I was filling out his university housing forms, Danielle and Trent were walking into a bank in San Francisco and taking everything. My mind kept circling back to a memory. Ethan was 12, and he'd asked if he could call me Dad instead of Grandpa. We were in this very observatory, looking at Jupiter's moons through the telescope. "I know you're my grandfather," he said quietly, "but you're the only dad I really remember. Would that be okay?" I'd felt my throat tighten. "You can call me whatever feels right to you, Ethan, but I want you to know, your parents love you. They're just going through a difficult time. They'll come back." Even then, I'd been making excuses for them, protecting their image in his mind. What a fool I'd been. Another memory surfaced, this one from 6 years ago. Danielle's second visit. She stayed for exactly 4 hours. I remembered because I'd taken the day off from my volunteer work at the courthouse. I still consult on complex cases sometimes, expecting to spend quality time with her. Instead, she spent most of those 4 hours on her phone, dealing with some crisis at Trent's office. When Ethan showed her his science fair project, a model of the solar system he'd spent 3 months building, she glanced at it for maybe 30 seconds. "That's great, honey," she'd said, already turning back to her phone. "Very creative." I'd watched Ethan's face fall, watched him carefully dismantle his hopes for his mother's approval and pack them away somewhere deep inside. And I'd stepped in, as I always did. "I think it's brilliant," I told him. "Want to help me set up the telescope tonight? We can compare your model to the real thing." His smile had returned, but it wasn't the same. Something had been lost that day. I thought about all the things I'd paid for over 8 years. The orthodontic work, $11,000. The basketball camp 3 summers ago, $2,800. His laptop for school, $1,200. New glasses every year as his prescription changed. Clothes for a growing teenager. Food for a kid who ate like he had a hollow leg. Medical insurance premiums. Copays for checkups and vaccinations. School supplies, field trips, music lessons. He'd wanted to learn saxophone for a while. Birthday parties, Christmas presents. The used car I bought him last year when he turned 17 so he could drive himself to his part-time job at the library. $39,000 a year, Morrison had said. That sounded about right, maybe conservative. Over 8 years, that was $312,000 I'd spent raising my grandson. Not that I'd been keeping exact records. I hadn't needed to. I had that education fund as a safety net, or so I'd thought. I pulled out my personal financial files and started going through them. Bank statements, credit card bills, receipts I'd kept for tax purposes. My retirement pension from the county was $68,000 a year. Comfortable, but not lavish. My savings account, which had held $94,000 when Ethan came to live with me, now held $12,300. Everything else had gone into raising him. Around 3 a.m, as Orion climbed above my neighbor's roof, I made a decision. I picked up my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in months. Philip Hart Detective Agency. The voice on the other end was gravelly, alert, despite the hour. Philip kept strange hours. "Philip, it's Richard Coleman." "Judge Coleman." I could hear the smile in his voice. "Haven't heard from you in a while. How's retirement treating you?" "I need your services," I said. "Personal matter. Discretion required." The tone shifted immediately. "What do you need?" "My daughter and her husband withdrew a large sum of money from a bank account in San Francisco 4 weeks ago. $180,000. I need to know where that money went." Philip was silent for a moment. "That's your daughter we're talking about. You sure you want to go down this road?" "I've never been more sure of anything." "All right, send me the details. Give me a week." 6 days later, Philip sat across from me in my living room. He'd brought a file folder thick with documents and photographs. Ethan was at his library job, which gave us privacy. "Your daughter and son-in-law have been busy," Philip said, opening the folder. "They paid off 3 credit cards totaling $47,000 in debt. Student loans, another $32,000. They bought a Mercedes GLE, cash purchase, $78,000, and they put $45,000 into renovating their apartment in San Francisco's Mission District." He slid a photograph across the table. "This is the car. Registered 2 weeks after they withdrew the money." I looked at the photo. A sleek silver Mercedes, parked outside what I recognized as their apartment building. Through the driver's window I could see Trent behind the wheel, sunglasses on, looking very pleased with himself. "There's more," Philip continued. "Trent's been telling people he closed a big deal, using the car and the renovations to project success. Classic fake-it-till-you-make-it strategy. According to my sources in the real estate community, he's trying to attract investors for a development project in Oakland. Having the appearance of wealth helps with that. They use their son's education fund to buy credibility," I said quietly. "That's about the size of it." Philip closed the folder. "I'm sorry, Richard. For what it's worth, there might be legal recourse here. If you want, I can refer you to—" "I know exactly who to call," I interrupted. "Thank you, Philip. Send me your invoice." After he left, I sat with that folder for a long time, looking at the photos, reading the financial records he'd uncovered, my daughter's signature on purchase agreements, Trent's name on loan payoff confirmations. Every document was another nail in the coffin of whatever relationship we'd had left, but beneath my anger was something else. A memory from when Danielle was 16. She'd gotten caught shoplifting a lipstick from a drugstore. Nothing serious, just teenage stupidity. The store manager called me at the courthouse, and I left a trial in recess to deal with it. I could have made it go away with one phone call. I knew everyone in the Portland justice system. Instead, I let her face the consequences. She had to apologize to the manager, pay restitution from her allowance, and do 20 hours of community service. She'd been furious with me. "You could have fixed this," she'd screamed. "You're a judge. You could have made them forget the whole thing." "I could have," I agreed, "but then you wouldn't learn anything. Actions have consequences, Danielle. That's a lesson better learned at 16 over a lipstick than at 30 over something that actually matters." She'd learned that lesson, or so I'd thought. Apparently, what she'd actually learned was to be better at not getting caught. I thought about my late wife, Martha. She'd died 11 years ago, never meeting Ethan, but I remembered what she used to say when Danielle would push boundaries as a teenager. "She's testing you. Martha would tell me. Seeing if you'll hold the line. Don't give in, Richard. Consistency is love. I'd held the line then. Time to hold it now. The next morning, I made another phone call. Percy, Washington Law Offices. Percy, it's Richard Coleman. I need to consult with you on a family law matter. Can we meet today? Percy Washington had been a family law attorney for 40 years. We'd worked together on countless cases back when I was on the bench. He was one of the sharpest legal minds I knew, and more importantly, I trusted him. We met that afternoon at his office in the Pearl District. I laid out the entire situation, the 8 years of care, the broken promises, the stolen education fund. Percy listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on his yellow legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and studied me. You want to pursue legal action against your own daughter. I want justice, I corrected. There's a difference. Is there? He tapped his pen against the pad. Richard, you know as well as I do that family court isn't about revenge. It's about the best interests of the child. Ethan's 18 now, legally an adult. This isn't a custody dispute. No, I agreed. It's a financial one. They made a legal commitment to provide for their son's education. They abandoned that commitment, along with the child himself. I stepped in and provided that care at significant personal expense. I'm not asking for revenge, Percy. I'm asking for reimbursement. Percy was quiet for a long moment. Then he opened his laptop and started typing. In Oregon, grandparents who assume parental responsibilities can petition for compensation if the parents willfully abandon their duties. We need to prove abandonment, which shouldn't be hard given their 8-year absence. We'd need to document your expenses, and we'd need to show that they had the means to contribute, but chose not to. I can provide all of that, I said. He looked up at me. The education fund complicates things. They were the primary account holders. Legally, they had the right to withdraw those funds. Morally, morality doesn't always translate to legal liability, Richard. You know that. But it can, I pressed, if we frame this correctly. They made a promise to their son. They put that promise in writing. They used that promise to convince me to take on a responsibility that was legally theirs. That's a form of fraud, isn't it? Percy's expression shifted. I could see the legal gears turning in his mind. Promissory estoppel, he murmured. You relied on their promise to your detriment, changed your position based on their assurance that they'd provide for Ethan's education. He started typing faster. It's creative, but it might work, especially if we can show a pattern of deception. 8 years of broken promises, I said. 3 visits, 12 phone calls. I kept a log. 0 financial contributions to Ethan's care. Jesus, Richard, you really did document everything. Old habits, I replied. 32 years on the bench teaches you to build an airtight case. Percy pulled up a legal database and started reading. After 10 minutes, he looked at me with something like admiration. You've been planning this. I've been preparing for the possibility, I corrected. There's a difference. We spent the next 2 hours going through Oregon statutes on parental responsibility, grandparent rights, and financial restitution. Percy made calls to colleagues, pulled case precedents, ran calculations. By the time we finished, the sun was setting outside his office windows. Here's what I can do, Percy finally said. We file a petition for reimbursement of care expenses. We'll itemize everything. 8 years of support at approximately $39,000 per year. That's $312,000. We'll also seek the return of the education fund, $180,000, on the grounds of promissory estoppel and fraud. Total claim, $492,000. The number hung in the air between us. They'll fight it, Percy continued. They'll claim they always intended to return, that circumstances kept them away. They'll argue that you took on Ethan's care voluntarily, without any legal obligation to do so. Let them argue, I said. I have 8 years of documentation. They have excuses. Percy studied me for a long moment. You've changed, Richard. The man I knew would have tried to work this out privately, would have given them a chance to make it right. I gave them 8 years of chances, I replied. They made their choice when they walked into that bank in San Francisco. Now they get to live with the consequences. That night, I returned to my observatory. But this time, I wasn't there to think or to grieve. I was there to plan, to calculate, to align all the pieces with the same precision I used to track celestial objects. Danielle and Trent had taught me something valuable over these 8 years. They'd taught me that some people will take everything you give them and demand more. They'd taught me that kindness can be mistaken for weakness. They'd taught me that sometimes the people you love the most are the ones most willing to betray you. But I'd taught them something too, whether they knew it yet or not. I'd taught Ethan integrity. I'd taught him that actions have consequences. I'd taught him that real love isn't measured in expensive gifts and empty promises. It's measured in showing up, day after day, year after year. And now I was going to teach Danielle and Trent one final lesson. You don't steal from a judge, not even a retired one, especially not a retired one who has nothing but time, resources, and a deep understanding of how justice actually works. I pulled out my phone and sent Percy a text. File the papers, all of them. His response came back immediately. Understood. This will get messy. I looked up at the stars. Arcturus was setting now, but Vega was rising in the east, bright and steady. The universe kept turning. Constellations shifted through their eternal patterns. Everything in its time. Everything in its place. Let it get messy, I whispered to the night sky. I've been cleaning up their messes for 8 years. Time they learned to clean up their own. Tomorrow, I'd continue being the grandfather Ethan needed. Patient, supportive, loving. But underneath that role, I was something else now. Something colder. Something they'd created through their own greed and neglect. I was justice waiting to happen, and they had no idea it was coming. The next 2 weeks were educational. Not for me, for them. Danielle and Trent were teaching me exactly who they'd become. Lesson by lesson, revelation by revelation. All I had to do was watch. Percy and I spent 3 days going through every scrap of documentation from the past 8 years. Every receipt, every bank statement, every school form I'd signed as Ethan's legal guardian. Percy brought his paralegal, a sharp woman named Claire, who organized everything into categories: medical expenses, educational costs, food and clothing, extracurricular activities, transportation. By the time we finished, we had 8 bankers' boxes full of evidence. This is remarkable, Percy said, looking at the spreadsheets Claire had created. Most people don't keep records like this. Most people don't spend 32 years as a judge, I replied. Documentation becomes second nature. But the real discovery came when Percy pulled out the original custody documents from 8 years ago. I'd kept them in my home safe, along with other important papers. He spread them across his conference table, reading through each page with the careful attention of a man who'd spent 4 decades in family law. Richard, he said slowly, tapping one particular paragraph, did you read this section when you signed? Probably. Why? This is a temporary guardianship agreement, 6 months, renewable by mutual consent, pending court review. He looked up at me. Did they ever appear for a review hearing? I thought back. There was a notice about a hearing, maybe 7 months after they left. I went alone. The judge asked where the parents were. I said they were in San Francisco working. She continued the case for another 6 months. Same thing happened, again, and again. Eventually, the hearings just stopped being scheduled. Percy's expression changed. They abandoned the custody process. Under Oregon law, when parents fail to appear for 3 consecutive custody review hearings, the guardianship automatically converts to permanent legal custody. Richard, you're not just Ethan's grandfather anymore. Legally, you've been his custodial parent for the past 7 years. The implications settled over me like a weight, which means you have the same legal standing as any parent who raises a child would have. If someone else's biological parents abandoned them and you took over, you'd be entitled to seek reimbursement for the costs of raising that child. The fact that Danielle is your daughter doesn't change the legal principle. It just makes it more complicated emotionally. I watched Percy work through the calculations, making notes on his legal pad. Outside his office window, Portland went about its business. People walking dogs, meeting for coffee, living normal lives where their children didn't steal from their grandchildren. Start gathering everything, Percy instructed. Every expense, every sacrifice. We'll need to build an itemized claim. And Richard, this is going to be ugly. Family cases always are. Are you absolutely certain you want to do this? I thought about Ethan's face when he got his acceptance letter. I thought about the 8 years of birthdays Danielle had missed. I thought about that zero balance on the bank statement. File it, I said. That evening I started pulling together my financial records. 8 years of credit card statements. 8 years of grocery receipts. I'd kept them for tax purposes, never imagining I'd need them for something like this. The orthodontist bills, the sports equipment, the computer I bought him for school, the car insurance after he got his license. I sat at my dining room table, surrounded by paper, and I felt something shift. For 8 years, I'd been the grandfather who stepped up because family needed him, the dutiful father who didn't question his daughter's promises, the patient man who believed the best in people. That man was gone. In his place was someone who saw things clearly, who understood that Danielle and Trent had never intended to come back for Ethan, who recognized that the education fund had always been their money, in their minds, something they'd created to make themselves feel better about abandoning their son, who realized that every phone call they'd missed, every birthday they'd forgotten, every promise they'd broken had been intentional choices. I was organizing medical receipts when my phone rang. Unknown number, San Francisco area code. I almost didn't answer. Dad? Danielle's voice was warm, cheerful, like we talked every day, like she hadn't disappeared for 8 years. How are you? I set down the stack of orthodontist bills. Danielle. I know it's been too long since we talked. Trent and I have been so busy, but we've been thinking about Ethan constantly. How is he? How is he? The question was almost laughable. She had no idea he'd graduated high school, no idea he'd been accepted to university, no idea about any of it. He's well, I said carefully. That's wonderful. Listen, Dad, Trent and I have some exciting news. Things have really turned around for us financially. We're stable now, really stable, and we've been talking, and we think it's time. Time for what? Time to be a family again. We want Ethan to come live with us. We want to make up for lost time. I know we should have done this sooner, but, well, better late than never, right? I looked at the papers spread across my table. Medical expenses, $34,000 over 8 years. Educational costs, $28,000. Food and clothing, $41,000. The numbers told a story Danielle didn't even know existed. That's quite sudden, I said. I know, but we're ready now. We're coming to Portland next week. We thought we could all have dinner together, talk about the transition. Maybe Ethan could pack some things, get ready to move down here. We've already set up a room for him. A room. After 8 years, they'd finally bothered to set up a room. Next week, I repeated. Yes. I'm so excited, Dad. This is going to be wonderful. Ethan must miss us terribly. I can't wait to see him, to hug him. Oh, and Dad, we should probably talk about the living arrangements. I mean, now that Ethan will be with us, you won't need that big house anymore, right? Have you thought about downsizing? Trent knows some excellent real estate agents who could help you get top dollar. There it was. The house. My house. The house I'd bought 40 years ago, paid off 20 years ago, lived in with my wife until she died. The house where I'd raised Danielle. The house where I'd raised Ethan. They wanted that too. I appreciate your concern, I said, my voice perfectly calm, but I'm quite comfortable where I am. Of course, just something to think about. Anyway, we'll see you next week. I'll text you the day. This is going to be so great, Dad. I'm so happy we're finally doing this. She hung up before I could respond. I sat there with my phone in my hand, looking at the financial devastation spread across my dining room table. They were coming. They'd spent the education money, and now they wanted the house. They wanted to take Ethan, not because they missed him, not because they loved him, but because of what he represented. Access, leverage. A way to extract more from the old man who'd been foolish enough to believe them. The irony was almost beautiful. They thought they were coming to collect. They had no idea they were walking into a trap. I texted Percy, "They're coming to Portland next week. Proceed with the filing." His response came immediately. "Are you sure? Once we file, there's no going back." I looked around my house, at the photos of Ethan on the mantel, his school pictures, His basketball team, his graduation portrait, 8 years of memories they'd missed, 8 years of a childhood they'd sold for a Mercedes and a renovated apartment. "I've never been more sure of anything," I replied. The next morning I did something I rarely do. I called in a favor. Margaret Stevens had been my court clerk for the last 20 years of my career. She'd retired 3 years before I did, but we'd stayed in touch. She knew everyone in the Portland legal community. "Richard Coleman," she answered warmly. "This is a pleasant surprise. Margaret, I need information confidentially." Her tone shifted. "What kind of information?" "I need to know who the best family law judge in Multnomah County is right now. Someone fair, thorough, and not easily manipulated." "That's easy. Glenda Morris. She was appointed 5 years ago, and she's exceptional. Doesn't take nonsense from anyone." "Why?" "I may have a case coming before her soon." Margaret was quiet for a moment. "Richard, you know I don't pry. But are you in trouble?" "No," I said, "but I'm about to cause some." After I hung up, I pulled out the file Philip Hart had given me. The photos of the Mercedes, the renovation receipts, the debt payoff confirmations, every piece of evidence showing where the education money had gone. I spread them out next to my own financial records. The contrast was stark. While I'd been buying school supplies and paying for basketball camp, they'd been buying luxury cars. While I'd been stretching my pension to cover Ethan's braces, they'd been renovating their apartment. While I'd been the one showing up, they'd been spending the money meant for his future. Ethan came home from the library that afternoon. I was still at the dining room table, surrounded by papers. "Grandpa? What's all this?" I looked up at him, 18 years old, on the verge of his adult life, completely unaware that his parents had stolen his future. How do you protect someone from that knowledge? How do you let them be angry when you're angry enough for both of you? "Just organizing some old records," I said. "Your mother called yesterday. She and Trent are coming to visit next week." Ethan's face did something complicated, hope and wariness fighting for dominance. "Really? Really? Did she say why now?" I could have told him the truth, could have shown him these papers, explained what his parents had done. But he'd learn soon enough. Better to let him have a few more days of innocence. "She said they want to see you, that things have settled down for them." He nodded slowly, processing. "Okay, that's good, I guess." He went upstairs to his room. I heard his door close quietly. He was probably up there trying to remember what they looked like, trying to imagine what it would be like to have parents again after 8 years. And I sat at my table, surrounded by evidence of their betrayal, and felt absolutely no guilt about what I was about to do. They'd made their choices. Every missed birthday, every broken promise, every dollar they'd stolen, those were their choices. Now they'd get to live with the consequences. I pulled up my email and sent Claire, Percy's paralegal, scans of the last few boxes of receipts I'd found. Car maintenance for the vehicle I'd bought Ethan, school trip deposits, the telescope I'd given him for his 16th birthday when he'd shown real passion for astronomy. My phone buzzed. A text from Danielle. "We'll be there Thursday. Can't wait to see you both. Should I bring anything?" I typed back, "Just yourselves." What I didn't add, "That'll be more than enough." Thursday arrived with typical Portland weather, gray skies, threatening rain, but never quite delivering. I'd cleaned the house, prepared the guest room, bought food for dinner, playing the role of gracious host. From the outside, everything looked normal. A grandfather excited to see his daughter after too long. A family reunion. But in my study, locked in the filing cabinet, sat 8 boxes of meticulously organized evidence. And in Percy Washington's office downtown, a lawsuit was being prepared, awaiting only my final authorization to file. They arrived at 4 in the afternoon. I watched from the window as a silver Mercedes, the same one from Philip's photos, pulled into my driveway. Trent got out first, stretching like he'd just finished a long journey. He'd put on weight since I'd last seen him, probably 15 pounds, most of it around his middle. Success looks, apparently, or the appearance of it. Danielle emerged from the passenger side. She was wearing designer sunglasses and a coat that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in 2 months. She stood there for a moment, looking up at the house, my house, and I saw her expression. It wasn't nostalgia or warmth. It was assessment. She was measuring property value. I opened the door before they could knock. Danielle, Trent, welcome. Danielle rushed forward and hugged me. It felt performative, like something she'd practiced. Dad, you look wonderful. Doesn't he look wonderful, Trent? Sure does, Trent said, shaking my hand with the aggressive grip of someone trying to prove something. Great to see you, Richard. House looks fantastic. What's this place? 3 bedrooms. 4, I said. Come in. Ethan's upstairs. I'll call him down. They brought their luggage inside, 3 large suitcases and several shopping bags. Planning to stay a while, apparently. Trent immediately started wandering around the living room, examining things. He picked up a photo of Ethan's basketball team. Huh? Didn't know the kid played sports. The kid. 8 years as his father, and Trent called him the kid. Ethan came down the stairs slowly. He'd changed clothes 3 times before settling on jeans and a button-down shirt, trying to make a good impression on people who hadn't bothered to call him in 16 months. Ethan! Danielle rushed over and pulled him into a hug. He stood there stiffly, arms at his sides, looking at me over her shoulder with an expression I couldn't quite read. Look at you. You're so tall. When did you get so tall? I grew, Ethan said quietly. We sat down to dinner. Roast chicken, potatoes, salad. I'd made Ethan's favorites. Danielle and Trent dominated the conversation, talking about San Francisco, about Trent's latest opportunities, about their renovated apartment. We put in new countertops, Danielle said. Italian marble. It cost a fortune, but it's stunning. You should see it, Ethan. Your room overlooks the bay. My room? Ethan looked confused. Yes, we set it up for you. We're hoping you'll come live with us. Wouldn't that be wonderful? A real family again. Ethan glanced at me. I'm starting at Oregon State in the fall. Oregon State? Trent looked surprised. That's in Corvallis, right? Bit of a drive from here. It's where I got accepted, Ethan said. For astrophysics. Astrophysics? Trent chuckled. That's pretty ambitious. What are you going to do with that, Teach? I saw Ethan's jaw tighten. Research, hopefully. Or work for NASA. NASA? Trent said it like Ethan had suggested joining the circus. Well, that's a nice dream. But you should keep your options open. I could get you an internship in real estate. Real money in that. The conversation continued like that through dinner. Danielle and Trent talking at Ethan, not to him. Making assumptions, offering opinions on his life that they hadn't been part of. I watched my grandson's face close down, watched him retreat into himself the way he used to when he first came to live with me. After dinner, Trent poured himself a whiskey from my cabinet, didn't ask, just helped himself, and settled into my favorite chair. Danielle was in the kitchen, supposedly helping me clean up, but actually opening cabinets, examining my appliances. Dad, have you thought about updating this kitchen? These appliances must be 20 years old. 18, I said. They work fine. But still, if you were going to sell the house, you'd get so much more with a modern kitchen. Granite countertops, stainless steel appliances. Trent knows a contractor who could do it for a reasonable price. I rinsed a plate carefully. I'm not planning to sell. Oh, I know. But you should think about it. I mean, once Ethan's in San Francisco with us, you'll be all alone in this big house. Wouldn't you be happier somewhere smaller? Easier to maintain? I like it here, I said evenly. She touched my arm. Of course you do. I'm just thinking about what's best for you. We worry about you, all alone up here. We. She kept saying we, like she and Trent were a unified concern, a loving family worried about their elderly father, like they hadn't disappeared for 8 years, like they hadn't stolen their son's education fund last month. That night, after they'd retired to the guest room, I sat in my study and called Percy. How's the visit going? He asked. About as expected. They want the house. Of course they do. Richard, I need your final authorization. Once I file these papers, everything changes. They'll know what you're doing. This stops being a family issue and becomes a legal battle. I thought about Trent calling Ethan the kid, about Danielle examining my kitchen like she was already planning the renovation for the sale, about the 3 suitcases in my guest room, and the way they'd talked about Ethan's future like they had any right to it. File it, I said. Tomorrow morning. You're sure? I've never been more sure of anything. The next day was Friday. Danielle and Trent slept late. then spent the morning in my kitchen drinking coffee and making plans for Ethan's future without him present. He'd gone to work at the library, probably needing space from them. Around 11, Trent started his pitch. I'd known it was coming. Men like him always have a pitch. "Richard, I want to talk to you about an opportunity. I'm putting together an investment group for a development project in Oakland, mixed-use retail and residential. The returns could be substantial. I thought, given your retirement funds, you might want to get in on the ground floor." I looked at him over my coffee cup. "What kind of returns are we talking about?" His eyes lit up. He thought he had me. "Conservative estimates, 25% over 3 years. Could be higher. I've got the prospectus in the car. Let me grab it." While he was outside, Danielle leaned toward me. "Dad, Trent's really good at this. He's made some excellent investments lately. This could be really good for your retirement." "What investments has he made?" "Well, we paid off all our debts. That's like an investment, right? Getting out from under all that stress, and the apartment renovation will add so much value. Plus the car, the Mercedes? Yes. Trent says having the right image is crucial in real estate. You have to look successful to attract successful clients." I nodded slowly. "And how did you pay for all of this? These investments?" She shifted uncomfortably. "Well, we had some savings. And Trent closed a deal a few months ago." "What kind of deal?" Before she could answer, Trent came back in with a folder full of glossy brochures. We spent the next hour going over his development project. It was impressive, I'll give him that. Professional graphics, projected returns, testimonials from other investors, the kind of package designed to separate people from their money. "So what do you think?" Trent asks. "Want to put some money in? Even 50,000 would give you a solid position." "I'll think about it," I said. That afternoon, while they were out looking at Portland neighborhoods they thought I should move to, I received an email from Claire. The lawsuit was ready. All it needed was my signature on the filing authorization. I read through it one more time. Petition for reimbursement of custodial expenses. 8 years of itemized costs. $312,000. Plus the education fund. Plus legal fees. Total claim. $492,000. Against my own daughter. I thought about Ethan, who'd be home from work in an hour, about the future he deserved, about the education they'd promised him and then stolen, about 8 years of showing up when they didn't. I signed the authorization and sent it back to Claire. Within 2 hours, I received confirmation. The lawsuit had been filed. Danielle and Trent would be served with papers within 48 hours. That evening, we all went out to dinner, at Danielle's insistence. She chose an expensive restaurant downtown, somewhere she remembered from her childhood. Over wine, she ordered without looking at the price. She talked about her plans. "We're thinking Ethan could start at San Francisco State in the spring semester. That would give him time to get settled with us. Find a job, save some money. The astrophysics program at Oregon State is fine, but SF State has better connections to the tech industry. More practical." "I've already accepted Oregon State," Ethan said quietly. "Well, you can defer. People do it all the time. Trust me, honey, you'll love San Francisco. So much more exciting than Corvallis." Trent jumped in. "Plus, living with us, you wouldn't have to worry about housing costs. That alone would save you, what, 15, 20 grand a year?" "The education fund," Ethan said, looking at his mother. "You said there was money set aside for college. How much is in there now?" The table went very quiet. Danielle's smile flickered. "Well, that's something we need to discuss. The fund, it's complicated. Trent had an investment opportunity that we thought would grow the money faster, but how much is left?" Ethan's voice was harder than I'd ever heard it. "We can rebuild it," Trent said quickly. "That's why I'm talking to your grandfather about the Oakland project. Once that pays off, we'll have more than enough." Ethan looked at me. I met his eyes and saw the question there. I gave the smallest shake of my head. "Not yet. Let them dig deeper." "So there's no money for college right now," Ethan said slowly. "There will be," Danielle insisted. "We just need a little time. That's why having you in San Francisco makes sense. You can work, save money, and then when you're ready—" "When I'm ready, I'll be at Oregon State," Ethan said. He stood up from the table. "Excuse me. I need some air." He walked out of the restaurant. Danielle looked at me accusingly. "Dad, have you been turning him against us?" I took a sip of my water. I've never said a word against you to Ethan, not once in 8 years. Then why is he being like this? Maybe because you've disappeared for 8 years and now you're trying to rearrange his entire future to suit yourselves? Trent's expression hardened. We're his parents, Richard. We have rights. Yes, I said quietly. You do. And so do I. The next morning, Saturday, I made one more call. To Philip Hart. Philip, I need one more thing. I need you to document their visit. Photos of the Mercedes. Record of their arrival time. Anything that shows they're here. You expecting trouble? I'm expecting them to lie when they get served with papers. I want proof they were in Portland, in my house, pretending to care about their son while planning to take what's left. I'll handle it, Philip said. Richard, whatever you're doing, be careful. Family cases can get nasty. They already are nasty, I said. I'm just making sure there's evidence of it. Sunday morning came. Trent sat at my breakfast table, drinking my coffee, reading my newspaper. Danielle was upstairs, probably mentally redecorating my bedroom. You know, Richard, Trent said, not looking up from the paper, you're sitting on a lot of equity here. This house, your pension, whatever savings you have left. Danielle and I have been talking. We could help you manage all of that. Make it work harder for you. You shouldn't be worried about money at your age. I'm not worried about money. But you should be strategic about it. Take the Oakland project. That's the kind of smart investment that could set you up for the rest of your life. And if something were to happen to you, we all have to think about that at a certain age. Ethan would be taken care of. We'd make sure of it. I looked at him, really looked at him, at the man who'd helped steal his own son's education fund, who was now sitting in my kitchen drinking my coffee, talking about what would happen to my money when I died. That's very thoughtful of you, Trent. We're family, he said, finally meeting my eyes. We look out for each other. Family. The word felt like a weapon in his mouth. That's when I understood exactly how to repay them. Not with anger, not with confrontation, but with the one thing they couldn't fight, the truth, documented and undeniable, presented in a court of law by someone who'd spent 3 decades learning exactly how to build an unassailable case. They'd taught me who they really were. Now I was going to teach them what justice actually looked like, and I was going to do it with the same patience I used watching the stars, waiting for the perfect moment. Letting everything align exactly right. They had 48 hours before they'd be served. I smiled at Trent and poured myself more coffee. You're absolutely right, I said. Families should look out for each other. I couldn't agree more. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in human greed. Danielle and Trent settled into my home like they owned it, which I suppose was exactly what they were planning. Monday morning, I found Danielle measuring my kitchen windows, actually measuring them with a tape measure she must have brought from San Francisco. Just curious about the dimensions, she said when she noticed me watching. This space has so much potential. You could really open it up, knock out that wall, create a modern open concept design. It would add at least $50,000 to the resale value. I'm not selling, I said mildly. Of course not. I'm just saying, theoretically. You know, for the future. The future? She meant when I was dead. That same afternoon, Trent spent an hour on my back porch, on the phone with what sounded like a real estate appraiser. I heard fragments through the window. 4 bedrooms, original hardwood, Laurelhurst neighborhood. Yeah, easily 620, maybe 650 in this market. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. Ethan spent most of his time at work or in his room. The tension in the house was thick enough to cut. During the rare meals we shared together, Danielle would pepper him with questions about his plans, his friends, his life. 8 years of absence, and now she wanted to know everything. But there was something hollow about her interest. She was cataloging information, not connecting. So you work at the library? She asked during dinner one evening. That's nice. Do they pay well? $15 an hour, Ethan said. Oh, her disappointment was visible. Well, that's something, I suppose. When you move to San Francisco with us, Trent could get you a job at one of his developments. Real money, real opportunity. I'm going to Oregon State, Ethan said quietly. Yes, but I'm going to Oregon State, he repeated, firmer this time. Then he excused himself and went upstairs. Danielle looked at me accusingly. He's so resistant. Have you been telling him not to trust us? I took a sip of water. I've told Ethan the truth about everything in his life. Make of that what you will. On the Wednesday of their second week, I came home from a meeting with Percy to find Trent in my study, my private study. He was looking at the photographs on my shelves, pictures of Ethan at various ages, awards from my years on the bench, a photo of my wife. "This is a nice space," he said, not even pretending to be embarrassed about snooping. "What do you use it for? Reading, thinking, private matters?" He picked up a photo of Ethan's high school graduation. "You know, Richard, Danielle and I have been talking. We really appreciate everything you've done for Ethan. We do. But we're his parents. We should be the ones making decisions about his future. You had 8 years to make those decisions. We're here now." His voice had an edge to it. "We're ready to step up. And honestly, keeping him here, isolated in Portland, away from opportunities, it's not fair to him. He needs to be with us." "Does he?" I asked. "Because every time you suggest it, he seems to disagree." Trent's jaw tightened. "He's 18. He doesn't know what he wants. He knows he wants to study astrophysics at Oregon State. He knows he wants the education you promised to fund. He knows—" "That fund is complicated," Trent interrupted. "We've explained that. The money was tied up in investments that didn't pan out the way we expected. These things happen." "Do they?" I moved toward my desk, where the filing cabinet held all my evidence. "So the Mercedes parked in my driveway? That wasn't funded by Ethan's education money?" His face went very still. "That car was purchased with money from a business deal I closed." "Interesting. What deal was that?" "I don't have to explain my finances to you." "No," I agreed. "You'll be explaining them to someone else soon enough." He stared at me, trying to read my expression. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm not as naive as you think I am, Trent." We stood there in my study, the afternoon light slanting through the windows, and I saw the moment his calculation changed. The friendly son-in-law facade cracked slightly. Underneath was something harder, more desperate. "Look," he said, his voice dropping. "Cards on the table. Danielle and I are in a tight spot financially. We've got some debts we need to handle. This Oakland development I told you about, it's real and it's solid, but I need capital to secure my position. You're sitting on equity here. Serious equity. If you sold this house, downsized to something smaller, you'd have hundreds of thousands freed up. We could invest it, grow it, set everyone up for the long term, including Ethan. By invest it, you mean give it to you. I mean make it work for all of us. You'd get returns. Ethan would get his college funded. Danielle and I would get back on our feet. Everybody wins. Except I'd lose my house. You'd lose a big house you don't need. You'd gain financial security and peace of mind." I almost admired the pitch. He'd practiced it, polished it, turned theft into opportunity, greed into mutual benefit. "I'll think about it," I lied. That evening, everything came to a head. Trent started drinking around 7, my whiskey naturally, and by 9 he was well past buzzed. Danielle tried to manage him, shooting him warning looks, but he was past caring. "Richard," he said, sprawling in my living room chair. "Richard. Can I call you Richard, or should I call you Dad? Because technically I'm your son-in-law, which makes us family. Family, right?" "Right," I said neutrally. "So here's what I don't understand. Why are you being so difficult about this? Danielle and I, we're trying to do the right thing here. Take Ethan, give you some relief, help you transition into a simpler lifestyle. But you're fighting us every step. Why?" Ethan was upstairs. I could hear music playing faintly from his room. Good. He didn't need to witness this. "I'm not fighting anything," I said. "I'm simply not agreeing to your proposals." "Your proposals," Trent mimicked. "Listen to you. Still talking like a judge. You're not a judge anymore, Richard. You're just an old man living alone in a house that's too big for him, raising a kid that isn't even his, and refusing help when it's offered." Danielle put a hand on his arm. "Trent, maybe we should—" He shook her off. No, we should talk about this. We should talk about reality. The reality is, Richard, you're 68 years old. You've done your time. You've raised your family. You don't need to be doing this anymore. Let us take over. Let us handle Ethan. Let us help you sell this place and find something easier. It's the smart move. The smart move for whom? For everyone! He gestured broadly, whiskey sloshing in his glass. Look at this place. You're sitting on what? $600,000? Maybe more? That's serious money just sitting here while you pay property taxes and maintenance and utilities. It's wasteful. Sell it, invest the money, and actually make it work for you. I set down my book. That's an interesting proposal, Trent. Very specific. $600,000. You've been doing research. I'm in real estate. I know property values. Indeed. Let me ask you something. This Oakland development you keep mentioning, how much do you need to invest to secure your position? His eyes lit up. He thought I was interested. $250,000 would give me a strong partnership stake. With your capital and my expertise. So you need $250,000, I interrupted. And coincidentally, you're suggesting I sell my house, which would give you access to that exact amount and more. It's not coincidental, it's synergistic, it's smart business. Smart business, I repeated. Tell me, Trent, when you and Danielle withdrew $180,000 from Ethan's education fund last month, was that smart business too? The room went absolutely silent. Danielle's face drained of color. Trent's mouth opened, then closed. The glass in his hand stopped midway to his lips. What? Who told you? Danielle stammered. The bank told me, I said calmly. When I went to access the fund for Ethan's tuition. Imagine my surprise when they informed me the account had been closed. Emptied. 4 weeks ago. Trent recovered first. Richard, I can explain. Please do. I'm very interested in hearing how you explain stealing your own son's college money. It wasn't stealing, Danielle said quickly. It's our money. We set up that account. We have every right to use it for your son's education, I finished, which was the explicit purpose of the fund. The purpose you stated, in writing, when you asked me to take custody of Ethan 8 years ago. The purpose that convinced me to dedicate my retirement to raising your child. Trent stood up, swaying slightly. We had expenses, debts that needed to be paid. We had to make some financial decisions. Like buying a $78,000 Mercedes? His face went red. How do you... Like spending $45,000 renovating your apartment. Like paying off your credit cards instead of saving for your son's future? Danielle was on her feet now, too. You've been investigating us, spying on us. I've been discovering the truth, I said. There's a difference. You had no right. I had every right. I've been financially supporting your son for 8 years, while you've been living in San Francisco spending money you promised to his education. I think I've earned the right to know where that money went. Trent stepped toward me, his whiskey courage making him aggressive. Listen here, old man. Sit down, Trent. Something in my voice stopped him. Maybe it was the 32 years of commanding courtrooms. Maybe it was the steel underneath the civility. He sat. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. Tomorrow morning, you and Danielle are going to pack your things and leave my house. You're going to return to San Francisco, and you're going to wait to hear from my attorney. Your attorney? Danielle's voice was shrill. Dad, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. You stole $180,000 that was designated for Ethan. You've spent 8 years avoiding your parental responsibilities while I shouldered them alone. And now you have the audacity to show up here, pretend to care about your son, and try to manipulate me into selling my house so you can steal from me too. We're not stealing, Trent started. You're absolutely stealing, or attempting to. But unlike your son's education fund, which you controlled, this house is mine. My pension is mine. My life is mine. And I'm done letting you pretend otherwise. Danielle's eyes filled with tears. Dad, please. We made a mistake. We can fix this. A mistake is forgetting someone's birthday. What you did was calculated theft. And you know what's interesting? I don't think you came back because you missed Ethan. I think you came back because you spent the education money and realized you needed more. You thought the old man would be easy to manipulate. Sell the house, invest with Trent, and you'd have another few $100,000 to burn through. The tears stopped. Her face hardened. You think you're so smart, don't you? So superior. We're his parents, Dad. We have rights. Rights, I said softly. Let's talk about rights. Do you know how many custody hearings you missed? Every single one. For 8 years. Do you know what that means legally in Oregon? They stared at me. It means you voluntarily abandoned your parental responsibilities. It means guardianship automatically transferred to me as permanent, not temporary. It means that legally I have been Ethan's custodial parent for the past 7 years, and custodial parents who've been abandoned by biological parents have certain rights themselves. The right to seek reimbursement for expenses, for example. Trent's face had gone from red to pale. You're bluffing. Am I? You know what I did for 32 years, Trent? I studied the law. I applied the law. I lived and breathed every statute, every precedent, every loophole. Do you really think I don't know exactly what rights I have? This is insane, Danielle whispered. What's insane is that you thought you could walk in here after 8 years and take whatever you wanted. What's insane is that you spent your son's future on a car. What's insane is that you're still trying to play the victim when you're the ones who betrayed everyone who trusted you. I stood up. You have until tomorrow morning to leave. After that, you can communicate with me through your attorney. I'm sure you'll be hearing from mine very soon. I walked toward my study, then paused at the door. Oh, and Trent, that Oakland development, I'd be very careful about promising investor returns you can't deliver. That crosses from bad business into fraud. And trust me, I know exactly what fraud looks like. I closed the door behind me and listened to the silence in my living room. Then the whispers started. Then the raised voices. Then Danielle crying. Then their footsteps on the stairs. I sat at my desk and pulled out my phone. Texted Percy. It's done, they know. Prepare for contact from their attorney. His response. Ready. Are you okay? Was I okay? I looked around my study, at the photos of Ethan, at my bookshelves full of legal texts, at the window overlooking the backyard where my grandson had learned to throw a baseball, ride a bike, be a good person. I'm fine, I texted back. Better than fine. For the first time in 8 years, I felt like I was standing up instead of bending, like I was fighting instead of accommodating, like I was a judge again, not just in title, but in purpose. Justice wasn't something that happened to you. It was something you made happen, and I was just getting started. The next morning, Danielle and Trent left early. No goodbyes, just the sound of suitcases and a Mercedes engine starting. I watched through the window as they drove away, in the car they'd bought with Ethan's future. Ethan came down an hour later. They're gone? They're gone? He sat quietly, processing. I heard some of last night. They really took the education money? They did, for a car and their apartment. He nodded slowly. What happens now? Now we make sure you get to college, and we make sure they understand that actions have consequences. 2 days later, they were served with the lawsuit. Danielle called at 10:30, screaming, $492,000? You're suing us for $500,000? $312,000 for 8 years of Ethan's care, I said calmly, plus the $180,000 you stole from his education fund. The math is very clear. You can't do this. I already have. You were served this morning. You're destroying your own family. No, Danielle, you destroyed this family 8 years ago. I'm just presenting the bill. Trent grabbed the phone. You've ruined us. We don't have $500,000. Then you shouldn't have spent $180,000 that wasn't yours. Now you get to explain to a judge why you did that. We'll hire the best attorney. We'll drag this through every court. With what money? You spent your savings on a car. Your credit cards are maxed. I paused. Good luck, Trent. You're going to need it. I hung up. That evening in my observatory, my phone buzzed. A text from Percy. They've hired Arnold Klein, calling tomorrow to discuss settlement. I texted back. No settlement. Full trial. The next week, Klein filed their response, denying everything, claiming the education fund was joint property, claiming they'd intended to pay it back. He even filed a countersuit, parental alienation, emotional distress, demanding Ethan be returned to their custody. Percy's response was surgical. Copies of custody documents showing they'd missed every hearing, copies of the education fund paperwork, copies of bank records showing 0 contributions in 8 years. 3 weeks later, we had our first hearing. Judge Glenda Morris, a woman I'd worked with decades ago when she was a prosecutor, took the bench. Klein immediately requested her recusal. Given the relationship between Your Honor and Mr. Coleman, What relationship, Mr. Klein? Her voice was ice. I knew Judge Coleman professionally. Unless you can demonstrate actual bias, your motion is denied. For the next hour, Morris demanded documentation. Phone records, business records, loan agreements proving they intended to repay the fund. Klein's face went pale. He hadn't expected this level of rigor. 2 weeks, Mr. Klein, Morris said. Discovery materials on my desk. If you claim these were business expenses, show me business records. If you claim you maintained contact, show me phone logs. She banged her gavel. This hearing is adjourned. As we left, I caught Danielle staring at me. Her expression was complex. Anger, fear, betrayal, as if I had betrayed her. I held her gaze with the same neutral expression I'd used for 32 years on the bench. She looked away first. Outside, Percy gripped my arm. If they can't produce documentation, they're finished. They can't, I said, because it doesn't exist. Justice was coming. The 2 weeks following the preliminary hearing were a lesson in legal warfare. Arnold Klein tried every tactic to avoid producing documentation Judge Morris demanded. He filed for extensions. Morris denied them. 2 weeks is sufficient. Motion denied. He tried to limit discovery. Morris denied that too. Your clients will comply fully. Motion denied. Finally, Klein tried to settle. Percy called me. He's offering $50,000 to make this go away. They stole $180,000 and I spent $312,000 raising their son. Tell him I'll see him in court. He says they can't produce the documentation Morris requested. No loan agreements, no business records, nothing. Then they shouldn't have spent money that wasn't theirs. The hearing was Monday. I arrived early. Danielle and Trent sat with Klein, looking worse than before. Thinner, more stressed. Judge Morris took the bench. Mr. Klein, do you have the documents I requested? Klein stood nervously. Your Honor, my clients have made efforts, but do you have the documents or not? No, Your Honor. Do you have documentation showing the education fund withdrawal was a temporary loan with intent to repay? No, Your Honor, but do you have business records showing the Mercedes was a necessary business expense? No, Your Honor. Do you have evidence your clients attempted to maintain contact with their son? They made several calls. Phone records, Mr. Klein. Do you have them? No, Your Honor. Morris leaned back. Let me understand. Your clients claim they borrowed the money, but have no loan agreement. They claim the car was business, but have no business records. They claim they maintained contact, but have no phone records. Is that correct? The passage of time makes it difficult. Mr. Washington, does your client have documentation? Percy stood. Yes, Your Honor. 8 years of receipts, bank statements, medical bills, school expenses. All organized chronologically. Have you reviewed these, Mr. Klein? Yes, Your Honor. Do you dispute their authenticity? No, Your Honor. Then here's what's happening. Your clients will produce whatever documentation they can within 72 hours. If they cannot, I will draw an adverse inference that it doesn't exist, because the facts they claim are false. Klein's face went red. Your Honor, 72 hours. This hearing is adjourned. In the hallway, Trent grabbed Klein. What does that mean? It means if you can't prove your claims, the judge will assume you're lying. But we... Did you keep phone records? No, but... Then you have nothing. I watched from across the hall as reality hit them. Danielle looked at me, and I saw it. The recognition that I wasn't the patient father anymore. That I'd transformed into something that wouldn't bend. The 72 hours passed. Klein filed stating his clients could not produce most requested documentation. They submitted phone records showing 3 calls in 8 years. Percy's response was brutal. 3 calls in 8 years hardly constitutes maintaining parental contact. The trial was set for 6 weeks out. During those weeks, Danielle called 37 times. I answered none. Her voicemails progressed from pleading to desperate. Dad, please, we can work this out. You're destroying your family? We'll pay back every penny. Just give us time. I saved every message for evidence. The weekend before trial, Philip called. They just took a second mortgage. $75,000. I'm guessing for attorney's fees. They hired Marcus Brooks. Marcus Brooks. Aggressive, expensive, known for scorched earth tactics. They're escalating, I said. Brooks will come at you hard. Be prepared. I looked at the 8 boxes of documentation on my desk. Let them hire Brooks. Let them mortgage everything. I had something they didn't. I had the truth. Trial day arrived. Marcus Brooks filed an emergency motion to postpone, claiming newly discovered evidence. Judge Morris denied it from the bench. We've had this date for 6 weeks. Motion denied. We proceed today. The courtroom was packed. Former colleagues, attorneys, even reporters filled the gallery. Former Judge Coleman suing his own daughter, everyone wanted to watch. Morris took the bench. Mr. Brooks, your opening statement. Brooks stood, and I understood why they'd paid his fees. Your Honor, this case is about a vindictive old man who can't accept he's not in control anymore. Richard Coleman spent 32 years as a judge. He's used to power. When his daughter grew up and made her own choices, he couldn't accept it. So he used his grandson as a weapon, documenting every penny to build this exact case. This isn't justice. It's revenge. Then Percy stood. Your Honor, this case is simple. It's about promises, actions, and consequences. 8 years ago, the defendants promised to care for their son and fund his education. Instead, they made 3 calls in 8 years, attended 0 birthdays, and spent $180,000 of their son's college money on themselves. Mr. Coleman seeks what any responsible guardian would, reimbursement for caring for an abandoned child. That's not revenge, that's justice. The trial moved quickly. Percy called witnesses. Philip Hart testified about the financial investigation. Bank records confirmed the fund withdrawal. Ethan's teachers testified about my presence at every conference, alone. Brooks fought hard, calling character witnesses who said Danielle was loving. He brought a financial advisor claiming the Mercedes could theoretically be a business expense. But it was all theory, no documentation. On the 3rd day, Danielle took the stand, crying. My father is making this about money, but it was never about money. We made a mistake. We were going to fix it. We just needed time. Then Percy cross-examined. Mrs. McVeigh, you testified you were going to fix the education fund. How? We were working on it. Specifically how? What was your plan? We were going to save money. How much were you saving per month? We hadn't started yet, but... So no plan. You'd spent $180,000 and had no plan to replace it. We needed time. In 8 years, how many times did you visit your son? Her voice dropped. 3 times. How many birthdays did you attend? None. According to phone records, you called 3 times in 8 years. Would you say that's maintaining a parental relationship? We did the best we could. Then why did you spend his college money on a Mercedes? The question hung in the air. Danielle had no answer. She just cried while Brooks objected, but the damage was done. The courtroom had heard the truth. 3 visits, 3 calls, 0 birthdays, and $180,000 spent on themselves. When court adjourned, Danielle and Trent left, looking defeated. Part of me felt sorry for them, but the larger part, the part that had spent 8 years being there for every moment they'd missed, felt only cold satisfaction. They'd made their choices. Now they were living with them. The final day arrived, closing arguments. I sat with Percy as Judge Morris took the bench. Brooks delivered his closing, painting me as vindictive and controlling. What kind of grandfather builds a case against his own daughter for 8 years? This isn't justice. It's revenge. Then Percy stood. Your Honor, this is simple. Promises, actions, consequences. The defendants promised to care for their son and fund his education. Their actions? 3 calls in 8 years. 0 birthdays attended. $180,000 spent on themselves. Mr. Coleman seeks what any guardian would. Reimbursement for an abandoned child. That's justice. Morris was impassive. I'll take this under advisement. Court is adjourned. We waited. Days became a week. Ethan worried. What if we lose? We won't. But even if we did, you'd still go to Oregon State. I'd make sure of it. 8 days later, Percy called. Morris issued her ruling. Read it. I pulled it up. 19 pages. By page 3, I was smiling. Morris had eviscerated them. Their testimony? Not credible. Their claims of contact? Contradicted by phone records. The fund spending? Irresponsible and contrary to stated purpose. The conclusion? The court finds in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. Defendants ordered to pay $492,000 within 18 months. First installment of $75,000 due in 30 days. The education fund shall be reconstituted with Richard Coleman as sole trustee. Attorney's fees awarded $23,400. Defendant's counterclaims dismissed with prejudice. Morris's final paragraph was scathing. The court notes with grave concern the defendant's pattern of abandonment and financial irresponsibility. Parents who voluntarily relinquish care bear a moral obligation to support that child's welfare. The defendants failed spectacularly. Their conduct demonstrates selfishness difficult to comprehend. They now face the consequences, as they should. I showed Ethan. He read it silently then. We won everything, plus attorney's fees. They have to sell the apartment. The car? Almost certainly. He was quiet, then softly. Good. They had 8 years to be parents. They chose not to. Why should I feel bad they're facing consequences? You shouldn't. Empathy doesn't mean enabling bad behavior. My phone rang. Trent, furious. You destroyed us. No, I said calmly. You destroyed yourselves. You stole from your son. I just made sure the bill came due. 30 days for the first payment. Start selling assets. Don't call again. All communication through attorneys. I hung up. Ethan hugged me. Thank you, Grandpa. 8 years of showing up. 8 years of being there. Justice wasn't quick, but it was worth the wait. The first payment arrived 29 days later, $75,000 from the Mercedes sale. Over the next months, more came. The apartment sold, their furniture. Everything they'd bought with Ethan's stolen future went to paying back what they owed. I never spoke to them again. By January, the education fund was fully restored. One clear winter night, I sat with Ethan in my observatory and handed him an envelope. Oregon State University confirmation. Full payment for his first year. Everything covered. It's real, he whispered. You start in September. Everything you worked for, everything you deserve, it's yours. Through the telescope, Saturn hung low on the horizon. I'd spent 8 years waiting for this moment. 8 years of patience, of building a case, of preparing for justice to arrive. Ethan adjusted the telescope, tracking Jupiter. What are you thinking about? Justice. How sometimes it takes time. How you have to be patient and build your case carefully. How the stars eventually align if you wait long enough. He smiled. Like astronomy. Exactly like astronomy. We sat together as the night deepened, watching the universe turn. Somewhere in San Francisco, Danielle and Trent were still struggling with consequences. That wasn't my problem anymore. I'd protected Ethan, restored what was stolen, made sure actions had consequences. The rest was just stars and time and the slow, steady rotation of justice finally being served. If you like this story, subscribe to our new channel and listen to a few stories there. You can find the link to it in the collaboration or description of this video or in the comments. Subscribe so you don't lose us, because this channel may soon cease to exist.